Paul LaRoche is the founder and producer of the award-winning Native American music group Brule, merging cultural rock and theatrical instrumentations with the emotional impact of the American Indian culture.
I guess if I go kind of back to the beginning of the Brule story, there's really a kind of a human interest background to this thing. I was one of the Native American children who was adopted at birth. I was removed from South Dakota's Indian reservation system, and I was raised by two wonderful adoptive parents. I grew up actually in southwest Minnesota, a small town called Worthington. But here's the strange twist that really launched a lot of things for the Brule journey. I was never told of my true Native American heritage. It was taboo back in earlier times to openly proclaim that you had Native American descent in your family tree. I was born in the mid-50s, so it was not uncommon through the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even up into the 60s that information about your biological heritage, especially if it was Native American, it was considered taboo, and many times it was swept under the rug. And that was the case with my family. They told me I was French Canadian, which was partially correct. And so nobody ever questioned that as I grew up all the way through the school system. It never came up one time. And it never really came up until I lost both of my parents in a short period of time. Over the course of several months, I lost both my mom and my dad. And my wife, Kathy, while going through their personal items, discovered an envelope that contained some information about the adoption. And so she had enough wherewithal to realize that she was going to search that out on her own before she told me anything about it, because she didn't know where that was going to lead to. So she began a search that started in 1987. It lasted for 5 years. So for 5 years, she's kind of worked behind the scenes. And lo and behold, one evening in 1993, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I got a phone call from our small apartment in Minneapolis. And on the other end of the line was a gentleman who introduced himself as my biological brother. And his first words to me were, "Hey, bro, you know, you're a Lakota." At the end of the conversation, life had changed forever. But he said something, my brother, my biological brother, neither of us knew the other had existed all those years. And so at the end of the conversation, he said something, a very simple little statement that was about to change our lives forever. He said, "Come on home." And so based on my wife's intuition, we took off, and we had our first reunion on Thanksgiving Day of 1993 back on the Lower Brule Sioux Indian Reservation of South Dakota, which is the smallest of the Sioux Indian reservations. And it was a wonderful reunion. It was a grand welcome. It kind of was in the blink of an eye that we became part of a new community. We became part of a new family. We became part of a new culture. And in fact, we became part of a new world. And that was the beginning of the Brule journey, which has taken many twists and turns. But that little human interest story is what initiated and launched everything that's happened for Brule from that time on. And it was during our Christmas visit that we had more time to talk about our lives. And when our new family realized that I had been in music all my life, I grew up as a keyboardist, played piano, played organs, got into rock bands when I was about 12. Very aggressively, I worked hard at music as a young kid. So when my tribal family heard that, they realized right away, they go, "You know, we have to tell you that you were very fortunate. Your adoptive parents were very kind to you, and they have provided you opportunity that would have never happened here on the reservation." Times were very difficult back in the 50s and 60s on the reservation, and they actually are to this day. But my family was very poor. They were an impoverished community. They said, "We think you should go back out into the world as the musician that you grew up as, but this time you can represent your tribal community. You can represent your culture." And so when I heard that, it it began to set the wheels into motion for, coming back into the world of music as a tribal musician instead of just a mainstream American rock and roll kid. And so that was the initial thought that happened that Christmas. And I'll tell you this, that the following summer we came back and we attended our first powwow. I had never been to a powwow before, ever. So our first powwow was kind of a transformation artistically and musically. And as I kind of absorbed the tribal sounds and the drum beats and the chants and everything that was going on, I always credit that first summer in '94, our first powwow, when the idea for the Brule music was born. Because I heard the tribal beats, I heard the tribal sounds, and in my mind, I still heard the rock and roll music that I grew up with. So there was a little fusion that took place in my head. There was a fusion of tribal beats and sounds and what today we would call classic rock. And I heard it in my head, and I thought, that's it. That's the music that we'll try to produce. And if it works, we'll take it out there. And with the support of family and the community and all of the elders, that's how things got their initial launch.
After deciding to start the Brule group, Paul met with a small record label in New Mexico and made their first CD. The label didn't know how the record would be received. Paul and his daughter, a flute player, performed in Rapid City to sell the CDs, which sold out. And that was the official beginning of the Brule music group.
As you can imagine, that duo turned into a 4- and 5-piece group with dancers and with big production and special effects. And really what we've tried to do over the years is to bring the culture out into the mainstream. If I could put it this way, I still like to think like we're taking the powwow that I saw that first summer and we're bringing it out to the world. But we're putting it onto a platform that mainstream America can kind of absorb it, because the powwow itself is kind of tribal, and a lot of people just don't get it when they go there. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the songs and the chants, and the dances are spectacular to watch, but they didn't really quite understand what's all taking place. So what we did is just took that powwow and put it on to the mainstream, performance stage, performing arts stage, whatever you want to call it, and told the stories and put the music together and presented the traditional dance and told everybody what's happening. And it found a place in not only America, but it found a place in the world. So what we're doing is, I've referred to this almost ever since we started. I call it pioneering one of the last musical frontiers. If you think about it, and if you really explore this, you'll find that most every culture around the world has come up with their kind of contemporary version of their music. But the whole thing is really contemporary. It's meant to bring out the culture into a new format. And so it became an undertaking and a challenge and a mission to really see if we couldn't bring Native America musically and artistically, like on a stage performance, up into the mainstream. And so we've been at that for 26 years, almost 27. So I think we've made a dent. It's catching on, but it's catching on even just now. It's taken all these years. It's just been little by little. We've really had to apply a lot of patience and belief in what we were doing, because nothing happens overnight, especially when you're pioneering something totally new. The mainstream music industry has yet to kind of comprehend and embrace and accept what it is that we're doing. And that's been difficult because we haven't been able to team up with a major record label. We haven't really been able to get mainstream radio formats, television, all that. It's been left in the dust because the typical response is like arms go up in the air. It's like, we like it, Paul. It's pretty cool, Paul. But we have no idea what to do with it. It doesn't fit our formats. We can't really book you into a circuit that we've got. Your music is different enough that we can't really come up with a hit record because it's not a country, it's not gospel, it's not rock, it's not jazz, it's not blues. So we just don't know what to do with it. You're on your own. And so we've always gotten a pat on the back and a little smile. And the mainstream industry is just kind of, shrugged their shoulders going, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So, I would say at this late stage in the game, 26 years, 27 years into it, that, I would say that there's a little more realization of what we've done. I think you can see it kind of in our crowd attendance and it's catching on, but it's taken a long time.
The Brule Group is one of the top-selling Native American adult rock music groups and has sold over 1 million CDs worldwide. Their annual performance schedule takes them extensively throughout the U.S., touring the casino, performing arts theater, arena, corporate, and festival circuits. You can check out Brule on Facebook and their website at brulerecords.com.